Hello and welcome to the Camo Grind, a series where I analyze every weapon in Advanced Warfare to help you complete every camo challenge by giving specific strategies, loadouts, and more, including ranking every weapon variant in order of usefulness based on several factors to give you an idea of what you should use and what you should redeem. I don't, however, just make this stuff up. My advice and opinions are based on thorough testing, in-game coded stats, and of course my own experiences in using these weapons and weapon variants, of which I own many, to complete every marksman challenge and earn every royalty camo. Today's episode is on the MK14, or the Mark 14. It'd be hard to find someone who likes this weapon because the semi-automatic rifles already usually aren't as popular in Call of Duty, and on top of that, the damage profile on this thing is very underwhelming compared to other guns, and on top of that, it's even harder to use semi-auto stuff with all the boost jumping in this game, so even for skilled players who have liked single-shot rifles in the past, there's really no practical reason to use this thing ever, when you could instead just reach for one of its easy-to-use, fully automatic competitors. Now let's dive into the first half of the video, which is the variant ranking system. Do keep in mind, while I do base these on a lot of factual things, like the coded stats and the time skill at all ranges, of course these aren't facts, they're just my opinions for you to use as a guide. I have the Signature as the best variant this time around, definitely up for debate, but I really like it. This is the first time we have a non-elite being considered the best, but that's actually a fairly common thing, it just hasn't happened much yet. The reason I like the Signature is that it's fairly straightforward. It does what I want from a Mark 14 variant without much of a negative. All it does is increase the rate of fire from 631 to 750, and in exchange you lose one of your reserve magazines, or 20 fewer shots in total. I find the base fire rate on the Mark 14 just a little bit too slow for my taste, and I'm sure some people will agree. 631 RPM plus some frame rounding fun comes out to a little under many people's trigger finger abilities and leaves you oversampling the weapon occasionally, something you really don't want to be doing. That really hurts you in gunfights. But getting up to 750 RPM being the same fire rate as stuff like the base AK-12 and AK-45, it's pretty hard to oversample that, which really helps you out, and the downside of losing a magazine, I really don't care. I won't pretend to be super pro. I don't often find myself going on massive kill streaks with the Mark 14 that require that extra mag. If it comes down to it, I'm sure you can pick up a weapon off the ground. In second, we have maybe some people's first choice, the better elite, in my opinion, the Eagle Eye. It is also the royalty variant for this weapon. I figured I might as well update everything here to include the royalty stuff. I like the Eagle Eye for the biggest reason being that free quick draw grip. It's nice to essentially have an extra point towards my class because I'd always have the quick draw grip on this thing no matter what. It's great for all assault rifles, and even more important for this thing, rarely will you want to shoot from the hip with the Mark 14, so that's nice. You also get 10% less view kick, not the biggest difference with this gun, but nice to have. And you have a 15% improvement in both your short and long ranges, although the short range is the only thing that really matters, giving you a longer distance to get those one-shot headshot kills, because the current damage profile on the Mark 14 is 34, 33, 33, so who really cares if your damage drops from 33 to 33? The small downside to the Eagle Eye is a magazine size reduction from 20 to 17. I don't find this that bad. It's not something like the S12 where magazine size is always very important to whether you live or die and your shots go super fast. The Mark 14 being semi-automatic, I feel very in control of where my shots go. Losing 3 is a bit unfortunate, but not that bad. And finally, the arguably larger downside is a bunch of restricted attachments. You can't use the stock, suppressor, extend mags, dual mags, or any optical attachments. Depending on your preferences, that may completely discount this variant for you if you hate the iron sights and need a red dot, but personally none of that bothers me too much. Just using the quick draw grip is usually quite effective, and you could also consider something like the parabolic microphone, definitely an underrated attachment when paired with the peripherals perk. I think that's a very effective strategy. Now finally we have the Desecrator variant, also very simple and very similar to the Signature. It's the only other Mark 14 variant to increase your rate of fire, this time all the way up to 800. Not really necessary, but you should have no problems with oversampling, and the only downside is 20% slower ADS time. Somewhat significant, I guess you could say. You'll definitely benefit from the quick draw grip, but as long as you have that, it shouldn't be too bad. So those are the top 3 for me. Now we have these 3 variants, the Sheriff, Sport, and Obituary. I think are all more positive than negative, and I'd recommend using them. I won't waste time explaining every single one. Instead, if you disagree with the position of one of these, feel free to leave a comment and I'll explain my reasoning. After all, I could be missing something. It's good that we have the Sheriff Marksman variant here. It's about time that a Marksman variant is actually pretty good. Anyone can unlock and use this, even if their supply drop luck is not with them. But here we are at the base variant, meaning everything past here, the Eclipse Elite, the Hardtip, Deluxe, and Ultralight, I think they're just not good, that the cons outweigh the pros, and I don't recommend using them at all. You can just redeem them for XP. Same thing as before, I won't explain them all, but if you disagree and want to take it up with me, I do encourage you to do so. I will briefly mention one thing before people say, well, what about stuff like the hardtip and the Eclipse down there? They don't look that bad. What about that damage buff? Well, true, the Mark 14 could really benefit from a damage buff, but not a single variant actually affects the damage values or body multipliers at all. What it does do for the Eclipse and the hardtip is it brings the surface penetration from medium to high, which is cool, I guess, but very situational, and I don't think that really balances out the negatives on these variants. Definitely more so on the Eclipse than the hardtip. So there we have all of the Mark 14 variants. It is time to move on to the Camo Challenges. We've already covered an assault rifle in this series, being the AK-12, so this is essentially more of the same, except harder, because it's the Mark 14 and not the AK-12. So first here we have long shots. If you've watched other videos in this series, I feel like I'm just repeating myself now. I'll point to the same long shot video I made a while ago. It's a bit dated now, but it's still very valid if you want some extra tips. Other than that, you shouldn't have too much trouble with this thing. It is, after all, a semi-automatic rifle. I was close to saying that it's built for long shots, but that would imply that it could beat out any other weapon at anything, and I wouldn't want to lie to anyone. Honestly, this thing is built for collecting dust in the armory. But let's move on to headshots. Again, need I waste your time saying anything here? What you need to do is self-explanatory: shoot people in the face. The Mark 14's massive 2.9 times headshot multiplier should help you out with this one. I think they added that in a patch a while ago when they both nerfed the damage and buffed the multipliers for this gun to try to make it more of a niche gun. It made sense, but because of the crazy movement mechanics and the still underwhelming damage for the extra effort required to use it, it's still kinda terrible. Next up we have strafe medals. I've never minded this challenge, and I doubt there's anyone who really hates it either. You can just jump around a lot, and consider XO hover. That'll make things even easier. You can just float up in the air for a while and get tons of strafe medals. For 10 bloodthirsty medals, it's up to you. How much do you hate the Mark 14? If the answer is a lot, you can always resort to the get 4 kills with something else first method. Remember, you only need to get the 5th kill of your streak to earn that medal. But I think the Mark 14 isn't that bad. As much as I'm making fun of it, I don't think it's really that terrible. I really don't mind using it. It's just that there's no logical reason to choose it over the other assault rifles. Anyway, I think it'd be more work to keep counting out 4 kills and trying to get your 5th with this thing than it would be to just play with the Mark 14 and earn this challenge over time. If you're comfortable with this thing, that'd be the way to go. Finally, we've got our 40 kills after dodging. I've never really had to think about this challenge. I use the boost movement stuff all the time, and I think most people do, so I can't picture anyone having to focus on this challenge. And I said finally, because these last 2 challenges I'll never really have anything to say, you just need to go without perks or attachments. So that's really all for the Camo Challenges. I wish I had some cooler stuff to say this time around. Sometimes I worry, is this really boring? I didn't really have that many unique things to say in that whole camo section. But I suppose if you're only here for the variant advice part, which I think is more relevant to everyone and that's why it comes first in the video, or if you're just here for the sake of being here, well, everyone has the option to tune out at any time, so not much I can do. Assault Rifle Camo Challenges are always kinda straightforward, and I think you'll find earning this diamond camo is just a gradual grind for long shots and headshots. So next episode we'll be taking a look at the IMR due to your suggestions, another assault rifle, and a pretty solid one at that, so our focus will definitely be on the variants once more. If you have a specific weapon or two you'd like to see covered either for the camo advice or the variant ranking, don't hesitate to suggest it and I'll add it to the list. If I see many people requesting one thing, the priority on that weapon will just get bumped up, and that's how we will choose what weapon will be next. So I hope you are more knowledgeable about the Mark 14 now than you were 9 minutes ago, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.